Ross, it's a thrill to have you. When I first so I've been here 2 years, and one of the first things that happened, which I realize, I think Ross does a lot for people, is he says, we're going to go on a helicopter. I want to invite you on a helicopter ride. And many of you are probably smiling, because you've been on a ride. I'm scared of heights, of course, but I can't say that. So we go to the top, was it the Westin Hotel? I forget. The W, like, oh my God. You know, I'm scared to death. And we're going all over town, and I didn't have the heart to tell him, I'm petrified, you know, heights, but he showed me the entire metropolitan area. But I think it's symbolic of the leadership that Ross has exhibited in helping to welcome people to this city, to this state, and he's a real leader in this state and in the country. So we're thrilled to have you here tonight.
Rob,
and
thank
so,
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
So let me start. Everybody knows Ross Perot, but they may actually, as you and I were talking, they may not know actually all the business interests that you're actually in. So tell us a little bit about your business, just to get started.
We're a very entrepreneurial operation. My father is still in the office every day. He shows up and keeps us all in line. And my father likes big ideas, Rob. So if you bring him a little idea, he doesn't get excited. He wants big ideas. And he likes young people because he thinks young people have bigger ideas and they don't have enough experience to slow them down from achieving a big idea. So we end up doing a lot of things around the world. And we are a global business. Real estate is what you read a lot about in Dallas-Fort Worth. And we're primary business, we're land developers. We develop land in the Texas market. And Mike Berry has the Alliance Airport program, and Mike is here. That's a 21,000 acre development north of Fort Worth, northwest of DFW Airport. And we have almost every kind of real estate you can imagine that would occur in this part of the United States. From one of the largest railroad intermodal yards in the country for the BN Santa Fe, to the Texas Motor Speedway race, to big auto racing, to the Deloitte campus, which is their global training center. 50,000 Deloitte partners a year come through the Circle T Ranch. We're breaking ground. We're actually having a formal groundbreaking this month on the Charles Schwab campus. And so big land development. There were very large industrial developers around the United States. And we'll build about 12 million square feet of industrial this year in the United States, Canada, Poland, and Germany. We're starting to grow throughout Europe. And if you follow the industrial markets, there's a huge e-commerce push. People talk about, and we focus on Amazon, but the Amazon effect is impacting all retailers. And so we have a very strong client list from Amazon to Walmart to UPS that we build for around the country, trying to keep up with this demand. And it's staggering to be on the leading edge with companies like an Amazon to watch what they're doing and how they're completely changing the logistic patterns of the United States. We then have very active industrial funds. We have investors from around the world. We buy and sell warehouses around the United States and in Europe. We're still in the technology business. We sold Perot Systems to Dell in 2009. We started a new IT firm called Guide IT, which is just starting to grow. And with the Perot Systems, as we built Perot Systems, we became very involved in India. We've been in India since 1996. We have very good Indian partners, and our top Indian partner, Anurag Jain, and I have a venture capital group now called Perot Jain. And we have a very large, successful program being rebuilt in India. We have 7,000 associates now in India doing healthcare processing, rebuilding what we did at Perot Systems. And we're very involved in the oil and gas business. We've been in oil and gas since the 70s. We start oil and gas companies. We buy and sell. The largest company we currently have is in Iraq. We went into Iraq in 2007 in the Kurdish part of Iraq, and we have a very strong team operating in Iraq today with the oil fields that we've discovered in northern Iraq. So that's where the East-West Institute comes in handy. Yeah. Because you're talking about a very complex political matrix we work through every day in Iraq. Is pretty staggering.
Okay. So if we start close to home in Texas, one of the things that's striking about Texas is migration. We've talked about of people and firms to this state. Population of the state, 22.5 million about 10 years ago, pushing up over 28 million and on its way north. And Dallas is a great example because it's growing very fast. Why are people coming to Texas? Because you see a lot of this cutting edge demand because you're building a lot. Why are people coming here?
It's amazing. It's the best real estate market I've been in my career. And the number of people moving in, the number of companies that want to move in. And a lot of it is because of our culture, our environment. As we talked earlier, our welcoming environment. It is a great place for people to move because we're a very open, welcoming society. And when my parents moved here in the 60s, they felt it, and the city embraced my parents, embraced my family. But you look at all the new families moving in, they feel that same warmth. And that's part of our culture you don't read about, but I think it's critical that people are so welcome. And as we move people in and out from EDS to Perot Systems, it's amazing the families that would move here, and then they say, well, we're not leaving, but I'll go off and do my duty 2 or 3 years somewhere else, but I'm going to come back to Dallas and keep my home in Dallas. So culture, the affordability, we're still a very affordable market. Our housing is becoming more expensive, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, but still we're very affordable. When we did the big Facebook deal, $1 billion Facebook data center that we opened this year for Facebook, it's amazing when you talk to Facebook and you talk about their challenges of continuing to basically grow in Northern California. The cost of housing is so high that I was talking to the engineers in the data center. I said, okay, tell me about your life in Silicon Valley. Well, this man, he's married, his wife's an engineer, they both work for Facebook. Even with 2 Facebook salaries, their commute is at least an hour one way. I mean, that's what it costs. The affordability index, our affordable housing is key. And one reason you see a Charles Schwab coming, a Facebook coming, Deloitte, et cetera, is the affordability of the housing, the quality of life. No income tax is huge. I mean, especially for the tax refugees from California, which they are. I mean, I think you've got the exact numbers. I think like 60,000 people a year move from California to Texas.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's because of taxes. Yeah. And then I saw Gerald Turtle come in, the strength of SMU. You look at all the California families that now have children at SMU, and what I've noticed is that the kids come, then the parents come. Because the parents see the affordability of the city. It's a great place to live. And a lot of them, if you're in your high growth, high wage part of your career, they don't want to give 13% to the California state government. They'd rather keep that 13%, live here. I tell people, live in Texas, vacation in California. Just don't spend over 6 months a year in California. That's all you need to do.
So you've taken me through the types of projects you're doing here, so for example, to explain the project you're doing for Uber.
So Uber asked us to work on Uber Elevate, and this is the flying Uber. And being a pilot, and going back to what I said earlier about my father, it's why he likes young people around that don't have experience. I listened to this Uber Elevate from the young guys that brought it in. I got, look, no way. I mean, the FAA, the bureaucracy, the safety, because we just started an airline, and we just went through the whole 121 process at Alliance, and it took us 2.5 years to become an official airline. The FAA it's extraordinarily hard.
So what is Uber Elevate?
So Uber Elevate, you're going to have a flying Uber. And so they want to have a flying vehicle to where you're going to punch an app on your phone. Uber will pick you up, take you to a vertiport. You'll go to the vertiport, and then you'll fly around town. And so that is the game plan. And again, as a pilot, I had a hard time getting my mind around.
In a helicopter?
No, they don't want a helicopter. It's going to be an electric-powered, emission-free vehicle.
Okay.
So it's a brand new aircraft.
Wow.
And so I was skeptical, but then I started hanging out with them, and they recruited phenomenal engineers out of NASA. They've got phenomenal talent coming in. I started talking to my friends in the aviation industry, and the industry is embracing it. Airbus has an electric-powered vehicle today, so Airbus will start to develop the product. You've got lots of entrepreneurs developing this product for Uber, and what we're doing at Hillwood is the land side. We're doing the vertiport, and we've got a great project up next to Jerry Jones in Frisco, at Frisco Station, and we're going to put the first vertiport at Frisco Station. And the most popular Uber route in Dallas is DFW Frisco. And so we're going to do the prototype DFW Airport to Frisco. And DFW, again, it's that attitude. DFW has been very embracing of the idea. We've embraced the idea. The Mayor Rawlings, has been very excited about the idea. Everybody's excited. Everybody wants to help. We realize it's a big technology political jump, but we're all here to do it. And Uber could have done this anywhere in the world. They picked Dallas-Fort Worth to launch the prototype.
And why'd they pick Dallas-Fort Worth?
Because of this attitude. Because we have a mayor that's excited about it. DFW Airport's excited about it. You had a real estate developer that immediately, our guys said, yes, let's do it. We have the Alliance Airport, so we can do all the training at Alliance, manufacturing at Alliance, and maintenance at Alliance. 20,000 of these flying vehicles will be built to service the United States. It's a whole new industry is what they envision. And, and I'm not the one to say it's not going to happen. We're here to help make it happen.
So if we project out ahead, And we've talked about this, and you and I have been on some planning groups for the state, projecting out 10 and 20 years. If you look out at the future growth in Dallas and the growth in the state, if you go out 15, 20 years, what do you project for, what's the population of the state going to look like, you think, 15, 20
In North
years?
Texas, we're doing 1 million people every 7 years.
Okay.
And so when we started Alliance Airport back in the 80s, 3.5 million people. Now we have 4 million people. So I'm talking to my children. I said, look, we're 7.5 million today. By the time you guys are my age, you'll be 15 million. And so you double the size of this market. If you go back to the 80s and imagine doubling Dallas-Fort Worth then, hard to comprehend. Well, it's about to double again in the next 20 or 30 years.
And
the
given
state will hit, what, 50 million by 2040?
That's our estimate, yeah. And you and I have talked about the challenges that'll create, which I'll get to in a moment. But this is in the context in the United States, and many of you have heard me speak about this, aging population in the U.S., slowing workforce growth, slowing population growth. Obviously, I won't get into the subject, immigration, it would be a key part of helping to improve population growth, but within that, Texas is going to take share from the rest of the country, is the projection.
Well, we are taking share from
And
the rest,
you think that's going to continue?
And I think we'll continue to do that. But, one of the greatest benefits of being in Texas is Mexico.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a fabulous ally and partner of Texas. We have to get an immigration bill. You've got to get a better guest worker program. And we have to have true legal immigration bill to hopefully get all these issues resolved and behind us. And hopefully, the politicians will figure it out, but we ought to have a bill where the only people coming across the border are drug dealers and terrorists if they're illegal. It should be legal for, we have, at Alliance today, we have 35 guest workers in our landscaping company. And it's a fabulous program. We have great continuity. We take great care of them because there's literally no one in the, if you go out and look for people in North Texas to work in landscaping, you're not going to find U.S. citizens that want to do it. We have room for another 30 guest workers, and we can't get the permits to bring them in. So there's all this work being left undone that we could bring people up, could keep them employed.
So if you had to highlight the 2 or 3 biggest risks to this city and this state to accommodate that growth, what would the risks be?
Well, labor.
Okay.
We're going to have labor. With Harvey, labor is tight today. It's going to be even tighter. And it's a very difficult time to build new real estate projects today.
Because of lack of labor.
Well, I asked our team on the new campus we just completed on Turtle Creek, I go, if we had to build and bid today, that campus, they say it'd be 25% more expensive. And so that's the inflation we're seeing. I don't think you guys see it across the country, but we feel construction inflation and labor inflation.
For skilled trades, including construction, we actually do see it.
And so that's going to be the biggest challenge. There's labor, but then the other one that we don't talk about is going to be power. And when you talk, we're doing a lot of data centers now, and the growth in data centers are staggering. I mean, the memory demand in the nation and the world to keep up with all of our phones and all of the gadgets that we have, and now with augmented reality coming, the new Apple phone will have an AR feature. So with augmented reality, you've got a whole new world coming that's going to demand data and more memory. And when you talk to the data center industry, I asked them, what's your biggest fear? They said, we're going to run out of power. The U.S. grid can't handle the amount of data centers we're putting on it, but then put the electric car on top of that. So we'll fix it because we're American, we're entrepreneurial, we'll get it done, but we need to start talking about the problems and focusing on those problems today.
How about, other thing we've talked about a lot is housing affordability, and particularly what's likely to happen. The projections are for the state of Texas are kind of hard to believe, but that the average home price here, I know the studies you and I have seen, or suggest it's going to be higher here than in New York in 20 years. I don't know, what's your view on that issue? That's what the studies show.
I'd short that bet.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, we're not New York.
Right.
We are Texas. We have a very aggressive real estate industry, very entrepreneurial real estate industry. And the challenge will be labor, which I think we'll learn how to solve. Okay. And with labor, we'll get, because housing today still is not very efficient. Yeah. You look at how we build a home, too much manual labor. Yeah. I mean, you get more and more automation in housing, and with the lack of labor, you'll see more automation come to housing. And since we have abundant land, we have cooperative cities, where the cities are having a hard time now, is that there's so many people trying to get their permits approved, the cities don't have the staff. And so you have a lot of, it slows you down to get your permits approved, but we also develop in California. And we have done the 5-year entitlement fights, 10-year entitlement fights in California. and it's never quite done in California. So an extra 90 days in Frisco, we can live with.
Right.
So I'm just saying with the entitlements are easy. We have plenty of land.
Yeah.
We're creative.
And we'll get more efficient.
And you're seeing the home builder left, if they're free to do what they need to do to meet the market, the homes will start to get smaller, more compact to keep the homes affordable.
Okay. And the last, water, environmental issues. What do you see there? Infrastructure, environmental.
Well, water after Harvey, looks like we're okay on water for a while.
Right. Yeah.
But in North Texas, we lived through the drought.
Yeah.
And now we survived the drought. Now our lakes are full. We're back in good shape. We need to constantly stay on top of them. And we passed, the state passed their water bill a couple of years ago to get more reservoirs built. And that's one you always have to stay on top of, to build more reservoirs to take care of the 15 million people that will live here in the marketplace. And so, again, the water's here. We can handle it. It's a matter, and the politics on water. And this is one, even if we don't have the reservoirs, you've got plenty of water in East Texas. We've got to bring it to North Texas. But that's politics, and there's plenty of water in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Then that's real politics for Oklahoma to send us water.
Right.
But the water's here. It's just a matter of politically, how do you get it here?
So I know you and I have been a part of some study groups, but I know for years you've been spending time in Austin. And I think that may be another unique thing about the state is the integration of business leadership with state leadership. How do you feel about the prospects, I assume positive, for this state, the governor and the leadership to address some of these issues so we can continue to grow?
I think the Governor Abbott's done a great job on Harvey. The state's done a fabulous job. The federal government's done a great job. Trump's done a great job. So on Harvey, I think we've learned a lot of lessons from Katrina. So that part of the leadership is very strong. On Facebook, the example I used earlier, Facebook came to town. They wanted to be in Texas. And all of our clients, they always show up last minute. And we have to then throw a Hail Mary to get everything done for them. And I had to go down to Austin with Facebook, and within 2 hours, you saw the governor, lieutenant governor, and speaker. We said, look, here's Facebook, $1 billion deal. Here's what they need. They got it done with a matter of 30 days. And so that was today's political environment, but that was the environment back in the 80s.
Yeah.
When we did the big American Airlines maintenance base, we went down to see Governor Clements. And Governor Clements, Gib Lewis, same thing. They stopped what they were doing, they focused on the client, they got the business done to win these big mega projects for the state.
Is there any other state in the country that you see that rivals Texas that you think they're doing things right? Or is Texas still leading?
It's kind of hard for a Texan
You
to
think
give
Texas,
anybody else credit.
But you operate
no, for
nationwide.
sure,
What do you
Florida.
think?
I think Governor Rick Scott,
Yeah.
Texan, we sent to Florida to help him out a little bit. Rick has done a very good job in Florida, and Rick is really, being a businessman, has put very, very strong business matrix into the state of Florida. And so as a competitor, and we develop in Florida too.
Yeah.
And so we'll run down there and develop because, again, it's a great environment. Rick has really transformed that bureaucracy. And so I would certainly watch Florida.
And the number one piece of advice you'd give to governors, you and I both know a few, Governor of Illinois and other states, what would be your advice to them?
Well, Governor of Illinois, Bruce
Rauner, yeah.
Yeah, he's got a tough fight.
Yes, he does.
And to have a Republican governor in
Also
Illinois,
a business person.
who's a businessman who went in, who had, what's the speaker's name in Illinois? Madigan. I mean, you just can't get around him. I mean, Madigan's got the state locked up with the unions. And so Bruce has got a hard fight. And luckily, that's not part of our culture here. Mm-hmm. And so, when I go to Illinois and what would I tell my fellow citizen in Illinois what to do?
Yeah.
That union political corruption is so deep and their pension problems are so deep, Rob, I'm not sure how you get out of it.
All right. So the moral of the story is, and you and I were talking before, we may take for granted here, I'm new here, but we may take for granted in Texas a lot of the things that are distinctive, but we've got a lot of things that are unique in the United States, don't we?
Our business culture is honest. Our political culture is clean. And in operating around the world where you don't see that, mm-hmm. You really appreciate what's amazing the United States has a very clean political culture compared to a lot of countries around the world, and that we can never take that for granted.
All right, before we turn to the group, I'm going to ask you a couple of lightning round questions. What's the smartest business decision you ever made? Best thing you ever did?
I think my dad asked me to come home and work with him. I
Okay.
said yes. How about that?
Biggest
I was in the Air Force. He kept saying, hey, you got to come home and work for me. I said, okay.
business mistake you've ever made?
Oh, there are a lot of those, but and the ones I use is when we were the first investors in Next Computer with Steve Jobs. But if you remember, Apple bought Next, and we took stock in Apple, and we were so excited to get our money out that we sold it.
We sold the Apple
We never should
stock.
have sold it. Can you imagine Apple, 12, 15 years
All right,
ago?
that hurts. Okay.
Well,
fair
I've
enough.
got more of those. So, but we try to focus on the positives.
You were 23, you set this record that Mark was just talking about. Why'd you do that? What prompted you to try to do that?
I got lost. I was going to Fort Worth. Went the long way around. No, an Australian took off named Dick Smith,
Yeah.
August 1st, 1982, an Australian took off to be the first man to fly a helicopter around the world. I read about it in the Dallas paper, and I said, I was a helicopter pilot at the time, and I got back to work, and there's a note from my dad, call me. I called him up, and back to where I started this conversation.
Yeah.
Dad loves big ideas. He called me up, he goes, you said helicopter guy? I said, yeah. He goes, what do you think? I said, Dad, let's go beat him. He goes, it's a great idea. Let's go beat him. And so that's why we did. If Dick Smith had never if he never took off to go around the world, I never would have gone around the world. And our goal was to go beat him. So August 1st, we decided to do it. We took off September 1st. We were done September 30th.
Wow.
It was a very chaotic 60 days.
Sleep much?
Well, we slept pretty well because a third of the trip was the flying part. 2/3 was the poor ground team that had to figure all this out. And I'm sure we've got Tom Luce veterans here, Hughes and Luce veterans, but Tom Luce and Hughes and Luce,
Yeah.
Tom sent lawyers all over the world.
Yeah.
And we had
Wow.
lawyers, if we were about to go to Saudi Arabia, Luce had to have lawyers in Saudi Arabia.
So Tom Luce worked on this with you?
Well, Tom Luce
wow.
worked on everything.
Wow, that's amazing.
Tom Luce still works on
I
things
know
for
that.
us, so, yeah.
I've noticed.
So that's why we went around the world. But it was a great team effort.
Biggest worry you have right now? Biggest
I
worry
worry
you have?
about North Korea.
Okay.
That's a serious issue, and I'm fortunate or unfortunate. I've been to North Korea,
Yeah.
so I
wow.
was there December '09, and I was on a project. If you remember Jim Jones, who worked for President Obama, on the national security advisor to President Obama, and Jim Jones asked some business leaders to go to North Korea. He said, "Would you talk to North Korea and tell them if they behave, you guys would come invest in North Korea?" I said, "Well, Hank Greenberg led the mission, so." I said, I would love to go spend a week with Hank Greenberg, which I did.
Yeah.
And we went to North Korea, and it was horrific. And it's a brutal part of the world, and what they've done to their people and how they suck the life out of their country. It is very irrational, and we have to take it extraordinarily seriously. And to have a man like General Mattis at the point and Rex Tillerson, we should all feel very blessed. Because
Okay.
they are the best the nation has, with McMaster to help work through these problems.
So you in your career have been involved in public service and in philanthropy. What's your philosophy on public service and philanthropy as a business leader?
Well, I enjoy the public service, and when I'm asked to do things for the country, and certain, like I was chairman of the Air Force Memorial for 14 years, I love working for the Air Force, and as a developer, it was a huge honor to build a memorial in our nation's capital. And so I love to do projects like that. And then on charity, I like to be involved in projects. I don't like to write a check. I mean, I do write checks, but I prefer to write a check but be involved. And so, for example, with this airline we started, we do lots of charity work with the airline. And if you remember 4 weeks ago, 16 Marines died in a C-130 crash.
Yeah.
And our team was asked to support the Marine Corps and fly those men back to their families for burial. And so we did that for 2 weeks. And when the Dallas policeman was killed, we flew, one of our officers was from Detroit. And so we flew the officer and his family from Dallas to Detroit for the funeral. Then we came back and picked up 80 Dallas policemen and flew them to the funeral and back. And so those are the charity projects that we really enjoy, where you're on the front lines, you can really make a difference. And I think aviation is a gift that we've been blessed to have within our companies. We've got a great aviation team, and so we do lots of these aviation-based charities.
And advice, I know you wouldn't be so presumptuous as to give other business people advice. What advice would you give to other business leaders about philanthropy and being involved in the community?
Well, anybody who's at the United Way luncheon today, we were honoring Ruth Altshuler. So if you want to see the best example of how to take care of our community, look at what Ruth Altshuler's done with Margaret McDermott and my mother. They honored all three. And so these are the big three within our community. And I think, love your community, be involved in your community, give back to the community. It's a critical part of what we do in business. Private business, it's easier because people are watching us and we don't have shareholders we have to answer to.
Yeah.
But if you run public companies, it's just as important to give back to where your community is based. It's great for your team, and it's really what we're here to do.
I'll ask you another question later, but I think, let's go to the audience and let's get questions from the audience here while we've got plenty of time. Yes, and I guess I'm going to ask you to go to the mic if you don't mind, so everybody can hear. I'm sorry to do this to you. You okay? Okay, good. Right in the middle there. We're doing this the hard way, I know.
You said that your father liked big ideas. I'd like to offer you a big idea. And my big idea is that the big problem with energy is not finding another way to generate it. These lights are burning because power is coming from Niagara Falls or a nuclear power plant or coal or what have you. The challenge is to store the electricity in such a way that it can be used. Not with a better lithium-ion battery or nickel-cadmium battery, but with a new way to store electricity. Don't call it a battery. In order to do that, I think the big idea has to be to get the government and industry together, and it's happened twice before, the Manhattan Project and the Apollo Project. When they built the Manhattan Project, they didn't know how an atomic bomb was going to work or how you'd go to the moon.
And I may have you ask a question, just to read a reaction.
What do you think of the big idea?
Well, storage is the great conundrum. And you have billions going into the storage challenge today. Elon Musk has got the world's largest battery factory being built. And what Elon told me is he said, Tesla is not a car company, we're a battery company. And we are going to break the storage challenge at Tesla. So you've got the world's top entrepreneurs on it. I know that the labs at MIT are on it, the engineering schools are on it, and I'm confident we'll come up with a good storage solution.
And can I ask you a question just to follow up, given you mentioned Elon Musk? Have you looked at the hyperlink?
I have. I think it's stunning.
Okay, and can you just explain to everybody here in layman's language, what is the hyperlink?
Well, the hyperlink is the tube where in fact, it's going to be, he taken all the oxygen out of a tube.
Yeah.
And it's going to be one of the fastest vehicles at 200 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And the theory will be is you can live 100 miles, this commuter problem in Silicon Valley I talked about, this is how you fix it, because you'll live a couple of hours away by car. By hyperlink, you'll be able to get into town within 20 or 30 minutes.
Wow.
But the challenges are brutal, because I'm told, the guys that want me to invest in it told me this, that if you have any deviation in the hyperlink at all, you're going so fast that if there's any type of error, then the passengers will get killed, because they're slammed against the wall.
So that's a problem.
So I said, I'm going to hang out with Uber Elevate, and we'll figure out the flying piece. We'll let you guys figure out the hyperlink piece, because that sounded pretty complex to me.
The odds of a train getting built from Houston to Dallas, you're familiar with this project?
I am. I think it's good. It's private enterprise.
Yes, it is.
A huge amount of Japanese money coming in.
Yeah.
The economics look good.
Need easements and other.
You have the easements, but the railroads have the easements. And so I think that's one that
You think
will get
could
off
happen?
the ground. Mm-hmm.
Okay, other questions? Feel free, go right here, please. And the gentleman right here, and then we'll take you next. Yes.
So is your father ready to be the next Fed chairman?
And my father, I don't think so.
You don't think so, huh?
I think he really enjoys going to work every day and keeping us in line.
Yeah, he'd have those charts up there and that big grin. There'd be such clarity.
Oh, absolutely. He might update the charts for everybody. How about that?
So, we had the hurricane in Houston. Not a lot of wind damage, just a lot of flood damages, and not many people insured for flood. And I was wondering your thoughts about how that might affect the future of Houston in terms of growth, and the state of Texas is in the
And I can
budget.
comment also if you want. Once you go in, we've done a lot of work on this at the Fed, by the way. I'll let Ross go, but I may fill in because
I think you've got a lot of the common sense issues. You'll have, at least 100+ billion of federal money coming in to rebuild Houston, which will be a huge economic impact. I'm worried it's going to take a lot of the labor out of North Texas. And so I'm not sure what will happen to our construction market here. Our building materials could have a spike in inflation. Because I tell a lot of people, we are a first world country. I mean, we have great logistics, great supply chains. We're very entrepreneurial. We have a lot of economic freedom. We will figure Houston out. We will rebuild Houston. Because we develop in Houston, and the paper's giving Houston a bum rap because our project in Houston, it's a 3,000 home development called Pomona, is completely dry. Because we built to the new building standards in Houston. We put 13 million into the levee system, and we are fine. And so you'll see the new projects in Houston being built to the new code standards, and I think they're going to be fine. It's the older neighborhoods are going to have to be rebuilt.
So I'll just add a comment because a lot of you are probably wondering what's the impact of Harvey on the state and then on the nation. And we've spent a lot of time studying the impact of other storms, and we're developing pretty high degree of confidence. The way this will unfold is, we think, in the state of Texas, and I'll talk about the United States in a moment, you'll have a period of lower GDP growth, not a recession, just lower growth, just for a couple of months, by the way, shorter than you'd think. We will then grow faster from say, October through January. We'll grow faster than we would have. That will take a while. A lot of it, how fast we get back to where we would have been, will depend on labor availability. But we'll eventually get back in Houston and the state of Texas to the GDP we would have been, and then we will resume trend growth. You will see in the United States, there'll be some estimates that will come out that will show third quarter GDP in the United States will be weaker as a result of this. Two elements. And the most significant will be, it won't be the loss of employment. We'll lose jobs and then we'll gain them back, okay, in the United States. So that won't be the cause. It'll be the business disruption. So the business disruption, refineries down and others, and we'll have to see what impact, this is before we talk about Irma, and how that affects Florida. You'll see some impact on GDP in the third quarter. It is our judgment, though, we'll gain that amount we lose in the third quarter, we'll gain all of it back in the fourth quarter. And again, we'll resume trend growth in the United States. So the good news is, I would be very optimistic about the future of Texas. This isn't going to change our views on the future of Houston, the future of Texas, and economic growth in the state and certainly in the country. And the only thing, as Ross said, that I would be worried about is unless we have some labor shortages, so it just takes longer to rebuild some of what's been lost. And I'm thinking in particular housing, a meaningful percentage of it uninsured. Mm-hmm. That's the surprise out of this, is a lot of these losses are going to have to be borne by people personally. This is where they're going to need all of our help and some government help. But the refinery industry, energy industry, even bank branches, not all back online, but moving back to being online. And so I think the surprise will be, even though substantial damage, and I won't even put a number on it, but we've got a range of estimates, we will recover and we'll continue growing, and this won't impede our long-term prospects. So I think that's good news.
Mr. Fad, augmented reality with Facebook. Could you explain what that is? Or
it's a Facebook data center. It's a $1 billion data center complex. The first phase is the size of an aircraft carrier.
So what's the term augmented reality mean? I think that was the
there's Facebook augmented reality.
What's that mean?
Which is virtual reality. You have to have the goggles.
Yeah.
And that's clumsy. Augmented reality on the new iPhone. You'll go to the augmented reality app, and I'll be able to look out in this room, and I can look, if you want to, you can be in the system. I can look at Mark. They'll say, Mark, where he's from, what he does, and where he, whatever you want up in your augmented reality profile will appear as I look at you through my phone.
Right.
And within a number of years, it'll go to your glasses. And then, we're all trained to look down at our phones today. We'll start to be looking up through our phones. Then you'll start to look through your glass. So there's a huge advertising revolution coming. I mean, it's amazing, and again, for my age, I'm not that excited about it. But my kids think it's like the greatest thing ever, and my son told me, I've got a son in Hollywood, and he's the one that turned me on to this. He said, Dad, look, so we in real estate are putting augmented reality rights into our leases right now. And I asked the legal team, I said, how do you do it? And we couldn't find the lawyers to do it. And I said, well, just put them in there. And so it's a brand new property right. So, we have signage rights on buildings, we have augmented reality rights on buildings. So we at Alliance are now trying to encompass all of our AR rights over 20,000 acres. So when you go into that project and you go to augmented reality, we control the experience.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Porro, you spoke about giving back and philanthropy. In North Texas, I mean, if you go to the North Texas Food Bank, I mean, it's like 400,000 families that need food in this region. So how do you reconcile giving back and philanthropy and then the amount of poverty that exists in our community? So what does the business leadership as well as the civic leadership need to do in order to address this? Because, I mean, here we are in the United States, I mean, we're the greatest country in the world, but then we have people within us that are still having to deal with feeding themselves. And so what do we need to do to address this,
Well, I think
this issue?
we're talking about the food bank and food scarcity, EE? Was that and then how do we solve the problem? I think we all have to pitch in and help solve the issue with the food banks. We've been involved with the food banks since they started here. My Aunt Betty started the food banks. And so we've been involved with food banks for over 30 years. We just broke ground on the North Dallas Food Bank, which surprised me. You need a food bank in North Dallas, but the food scarcity issues all over town. So that's been our focus.
So just to follow up on that, one of the things we've talked a lot about also, and it's projected to even get worse, is wealth inequality and income inequality in the state. Some of that has to do with early childhood literacy lagging behind, educational attainment lagging, and some of it has to do with blighted areas, lack of education, lack of transportation infrastructure. What's your thought on what needs to be done about the rising inequality in the state of Texas?
I think it goes, now, our inequality is less than the California and New Yorks of the world because of our housing. And so we are a more equal society in Texas. The city of Houston is now the most diverse city in the United States. This is a very diverse state with entrepreneurial talent coming in from all over, and we attract entrepreneurial talent. And that, because a lot of our talent from overseas, first stop will be East Coast, West Coast. I think they look at the tax rates and say, no, I'm headed to Houston or Dallas, and they come here. So it's, number one, still we want our economy is being run with imported talent. Our talent being raised in Texas, the education system is not generating enough talent to run this economy. So we have to continue to focus on education. And the real focus is the inner city education. I mean, that's where there's a lot of focus there today. A lot of great men and women are focused on it. We've got to continue to focus on it to give those young kids a chance to have a great life. Because there's 6 million job openings in the U.S. today. I mean, there are plenty of jobs. I mean, the unemployment rate in Dallas-Fort Worth is 4.4%, roughly. So if you want to work, the work is here. We've got to get the kids up and trained, and vocational training is going to be a big part of the answer because of this construction problem we talked about.
Yeah, I agree. Yes, sir.
Mr. Perot, do you think that Dallas, particularly downtown Dallas, may be overbuilt? There seem to be new buildings and cranes going up everywhere.
That's a hard question to ask a real estate developer. More building. I think if you look at the cranes, you look at the development, but a lot of it's multifamily. The multifamily's filling up. And so I would think that the market is still sound. It's still solid. And as long as you have these growth rates, we're going to have places for people to live and move to. And I think with the Harvey refugees coming up, you'll see a lot of families live here for a year or two. And so the multifamily is going to get even tighter. Single family could get even tighter because of our citizens coming up from Houston. If it's like what happened in Katrina, it will.
Yes, yes.
Hi, I am going to ask a follow-up question. I have heard you both speak and about the skills gaps and students going into these skill level jobs, and we don't have enough room for them, or we have enough room for them, but we don't have the skill level. So one thing you said today about the housing, I was wondering if we have these skilled workers and they're going to make preferably decent salaries, but if we keep pricing our market out, because I'm a Dallasite, by the way, and I'm an educator, so that's why I'm asking this question. But if we have a rising cost in housing, like your guest program for your workers that come over for landscaping or any other jobs, I keep asking myself, where are they going to live? How are we going to make sure that we have affordable housing for them? Because I live in a neighborhood where they're price gouging. I lived in the neighborhood all my life, and I've seen people come in, make a small change, raise the price up because the people from California are moving here, buying sight unseen. So it kind of raises our property values. So I was wondering, how do we, as a city, ensure that we have affordable housing for these people that we want to take our middle skills jobs?
Well, we have, compared to the country, we still have very affordable housing throughout the North Texas marketplace. And the city of Dallas is now starting to require affordable housing permits with the multifamily permits. And so you're starting to see public policy enter into the debate. And I think as a developer, the city continues to push and should push the near south side of downtown Dallas, because you have a lot of land that's affordable that you can put some great housing down there. So keep the market fluid, keep your entitlements quick so developers can build quickly, and make sure you've got plenty of, a lot of this gets down to, you have affordable housing in one part of town, but the jobs are in another part of town. And so we now in North Dallas, in the Frisco market, you have a very difficult time finding service labor because there's not affordable housing around Frisco. So it continue mass transit.
And so just to follow up on the question, just similar to this, what we've been working on is, so obviously there's a skills gap. There's more skilled job openings in the United States than there is supply, and certainly, and so Dallas Community College is a great example of an institution that works well and is closing the skills gap, and they do it in conjunction with businesses. The reason skills gap exists in the United States is it's got to be fixed locally. Worker mobility in this country is historically low. And I would say Dallas is doing a good job. Many cities in this country are lagging, but this is why there's a skilled gap nationwide. But the three things that go with it, Ross talked about housing, affordable housing, but the other two, which I've learned about, and Toyota and other companies are filling in transportation, and that we don't have mass transit, so more is being done by private businesses to provide transportation from one area to another. And then the third is childcare. One of the reasons people can't get from one job, they get trained, but they can't get to the job, is childcare. So I think the mayor, other leaders in the community like Ross are working on, I think, multi-pronged, all those things, making sure we've got skills training, there's more focus on affordable housing, there's focus on private companies stepping up and providing transportation, and childcare is the last. And so I think what I'm impressed by is we're creating an ecosystem here to try to address it, but we got a long way to go. But it's a big issue, and we see it a lot. And when there's protesters outside the Fed, which there aren't as many as there used to be, but they're out there, this legitimately is what they're raising. And we spent a lot of time learning about it and trying to help address it. Yes, please.
If we get into a military conflict with North Korea, with maximum effect upon North Korea and minimal effect to the United States, what would be the economic effect of that? Worldwide and domestically?
That's a great question for Rob.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, this one we've talked about this.
Right.
The impact of this type of thing is binary, and I think right now you see the financial markets, and I'll get to answer your question, are dealing with it by maybe a little bit of a flight to quality. You see the 10-year treasuries now dip below 210. You see it a little bit, but you're not seeing a lot because it is so binary. And understandably, if this were to happen, I would guess the chilling effect on business and commerce for some period of time would be significant. It would have, you can imagine, very tough ripple effects on markets and a whole number of other things. And that's why I think people are appropriately emphasizing the need for diplomacy and every other option being explored because the economic effects are unpredictable and could be hard to imagine. And so it's better to try to manage away from that.
Thank you, Ross. Your voice is changing.
Well, I'm not sure of what happens. So if the impact of the war is, I believe you're not going to go to war. China has the ability to control North Korea. China and North Korea do not get along. The relationship is very bad between the two countries. But China does have, since they supply the oil, they have the ability to keep North Korea in line. And I think when the pressure gets to a point, China's afraid of implosion. What they tell me is they don't want U.S. soldiers on their border. And so that's their big fear. I don't believe it. That's a negotiation point. I mean, once North and South Korea are unified, then we don't have to have soldiers there. We can take care of that. But it's the unification. We need to start encouraging the unification of Korea. And we, with Japan, South Korea, and China, need to start talking about how North Korea will be integrated into South Korea. Because right now, no one wants to think about it. We need to think about it. And so the Chinese have got, I think, 200,000 troops on the North Korean border. If it starts to implode, they're going to drive 200 miles into North Korea, and they will control a 200-mile buffer with North Korea. And their fear is the North Korean people coming to China. It's going to be a huge refugee crisis that we ought to gear up today to get ready for. And I've never heard this in any conversation, but a Chinese ambassador told me, he goes, our fear is the North Korean people for decades have been starved. So they're 2 to 3 inches shorter than the South Korean race. Their IQ has been dropping. So in effect, it is one of the poorest health intellectual parts of the world, from an intellectual standpoint. And the Chinese are afraid of interbreeding with the North Korean race, which is so crude. Just not a comment you've heard before. They say, we are afraid because of how malnourished and sick the North Koreans are. So this is what they worry about, but we need to go into the unthinkable, put a game plan together, have brutal defenses. You've got to we hear about the THAAD system in South Korea. You hear about the Aegis system off the coast of North Korea and in Japan. You're going to have to basically, and the other point is back to this warfare comment, the Chinese military has now told North Korea they've ripped up their treaties. They're saying, look, if you guys get attacked, China's not going to come help. But you've misbehaved so much, we're not going to come to your aid. So what will happen if you have a conflict? It could end very quickly if you have a refugee program in place to take care of North and South Korea. The East Germany, this is probably more than you want to hear. East Germany, West Germany, when they integrated, the West Germans were 5-1 economically over East Germany. The economic disparity between South Korea and North Korea is 20-1. So you've got a brutal, brutal hill to climb, but it's part of that planning for the integration of North and South Korea. And so that's what we can do. That's what our leadership is talking about. And you're going to have to, but before China moves, you're going to have to put extraordinary pressure on China, including having the courage to bring nuclear weapons back to South Korea, which we removed in 1991. We took them out of South Korea, hoping North Korea would behave. That didn't work. I would reintroduce, and then you're seeing in Japan, the political will is changing. Once North Korea fired a missile over Japan, the Japanese are now contemplating changing their constitution where they can become an offensive military force. And I would make it very clear that after what North Korea did, they should be allowed to do what they need to do to protect their country. If they want to go within 90 days, Japan can have a nuclear weapon. I would make it clear to China, because you will not keep North Korea in line, we will not protest Japan if they decide to build a nuclear weapon. These are the cards that will be played that will put huge pressure on China. We need a game plan to relieve that pressure with a unification strategy. So
Interesting.
That would be my view.
Well, as I've been standing here, I think you primarily answered my question, is what is the realistic diplomatic solution, and is China key to that? But I think you dealt a lot with it as I was standing here. Thank you.
Yeah, China is key.
Please, yes.
Good afternoon. Mr. Perot, what is your thought, knowing, I guess, a fair amount of legislators, that they will actually fix the DACA problem? And now I think 800,000 illegal immigrants that are at risk, but they're highly skilled, they're in college, they're working for the big companies. I mean, they're tremendously valuable to the workforce and to companies. And if they get deported, I think it's going to be real bad for the economy. So you think that Congress will actually come out with a sensible immigration reform?
I do. Not all of immigration, but DACA. I think DACA, I know Paul Ryan is for it. I know, the Republican leadership is for it. The Democratic leadership is for it. I would hope to have a very clean, fast DACA bill that they would pass, and they should show the American people that they know can pass good quality legislation that's good for the country. That's my optimistic view. Without it being gummed up. Now, everybody will try to gum it up, and it won't be that easy, but everybody understands the importance of DACA and legalizing these kids as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Back on the state level, Texas does not have any problem in attracting companies to move here. I believe the housing, the commuting, transportation, and childcare issues could be easily handled. However, do you think that our subpar public education will eventually dissuade companies from moving here, because the people who work in those companies are families and they have children, and the children need to be educated?
I think a lot of education, as we said earlier, is critical. We have very, very good public education throughout the state and throughout North Texas. Where you have your trouble is your inner cities. So we would move, when we had EDS, it was easy to move our team into the Plano school system, into the Richardson school system, into the Southlake school system. So you've got these very good public school systems where a lot of this high-tech talent and a lot of this talent's moving into, and that's actually attracts the talent in. It's these big inner city schools, that's where we have to focus and bring them up to standards.
What about Dallas?
Dallas, well, the Dallas Independent School District has got to be brought up to standards, including the courage, if it's too big and too unmanageable, you've got to break it up, which politically no one wants to talk about. But if it's so big, break it into smaller pieces, integrate it into other successful school districts, and try to give these kids a chance.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Sanjeev Das. I'm the CEO of one of the largest mortgage lending companies in the country. So this question is probably more for Rob than for you, but I want to pick up on the issue that you talked about with respect to housing affordability. And here's what I see every single day. I see a lot of rejections on mortgage applications for people who actually, as you know, mortgage is a principal way in which people buy homes. Housing affordability is a problem, which is why mortgage applications get rejected when people can't afford it. But it looks like we might be staring at the next few quarters where interest rates might go up. That will make affordability even harder. How do you think about that?
Want to comment on that, Ross?
Well, I think the mortgage rates, it'll make it more difficult, but it's the business we're in. I mean, you ride up and down, the home builders are aggressive, they're entrepreneurial, they change the homes. I mentioned earlier, the homes are getting smaller, lot sizes are getting smaller to have a more affordable home and affordable product. But they might go up a little bit, but it's difficult to see them going very high.
Thank you. I agree with that. Two more questions just as we close.
Okay.
For you. Number one, if the state were to get to 50 million, which you said, I think 50 million by 2040. So what's the state going to, where's the additional 32 million people, 22 million people going to live? What will the state look like?
Well, most will live up here. You've looked at those big macro trend maps, and the futurists think Dallas, Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio, Houston, we grow into one big global mega city. And so that's where they see us in 150, 200 years.
More multifamily, less single family?
I think because of the cost issue, you're going to have denser housing. It'll be multifamily housing because, again, affordability. But there's a lot of land, and so if you want the single-family home, it's still going to be there.
Okay. And then the final question, if you were giving advice to a young or younger person, either starting their career in the middle of their career today, what's the number one piece of advice you would give to a person who's trying to build their career?
I want to live in Texas. I mean, this is, you want to be in an entrepreneurial, optimistic, exciting part of the world where we believe in the future, we believe in ourselves, we believe in each other, and we have really unlimited opportunities in this part of the United States. I mean, that would be my, I say it, I tell kids all the time that, so.
And once you're in Texas, so you made that right
So now we're
decision.
here, right.
Now what? Now, what advice do you give to people growing up in Texas or people pursuing their careers here?
Then, what's your passion?
Yeah.
What do you love to do?
Right.
Do something you love, because if you love it, you'll be even better. And be very dedicated, very focused. And then you can do that when you're young and single. Then you get married. As I tell everybody, make sure you spend time with your family, because it goes very fast. And before you know it, the kids are gone. And you don't want to miss a moment. And so when I dropped off, each of my kids to school, my wife and I would look at them and we'd say, we left it all in the field. I mean, everything we could do for you, we did, because you were the most important and are the most important things in our lives. And, lead a balanced life, take great care of your family, love your work, and then take great care of your team. Your team and who you work with every day. That's your extended family. Take great care of that family. And I'm blessed to have a fabulous team. We've been together for decades, and that's the environment that I like to live in.
All right. Ross, thank you for being here tonight.
Rob,
thank you for your
you.
leadership.
Appreciate it.